Today we're going to talk about from Old Town Road to New Horizons and the big reshuffle across a couple of different industries. And for this, we have a very good panel with a lot of expertise. And I'll start on my left, introducing Ana Raptis, founder and managing partner of Amplifica Capital, a women's-based investment fund. Next to her is Gail Schuler, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at 3M. Next to Sharon is Ryan Croft, CEO and co-founder of food startup Pacto. And finally, Gail Schuler, Sharon Tompkins, Vice President of Social Impact of TC Energy, coming all the way from Calgary, but originally from Southern California. So I wanted to start off the panel with something simple. Technology and innovation is a buzzword right now. But more than a buzzword, how is machine learning impacting North America and influencing specifically each of your industries? So I'll start with Anna on my left.
Well, thank you for the question, Carla. I know we hear so much about this, every day new acronyms being developed and thrown around. And what we've seen in VC, so I invest in women in tech across Latin America. Specific examples that I can see is the way that we are actually making consumers, that means people's lives, better by understanding and analysing their habits. And I'll give you an example. One of the companies we invested in is a company called Colors, and Colors does intercity transportation. And so by machine learning, data analytics, they can really understand the needs of their customers, where they want to travel to. Like, they don't necessarily want to go to the bus depot, which might not be where they want to get to. Colors does virtual stops. So by understanding, the needs of the consumers, they can improve the quality of people's lives and reduce the environmental impact by helping people get to their destinations more quickly. So that's the kind of things we're seeing, like, real data of understanding people's movements rather than just sending them to places that they don't really want to go to.
So it's interesting that you mentioned data, but how do you apply this, Gail, when we talk about materials, and how is 3M thinking about this?
Yeah, great. So 3M's a science and technology company and has been for a long time and associated with innovation, but we tend to be more material science at our roots. So when the data science comes up, whether it's machine learning or artificial intelligence, it comes in kind of surprising ways sometimes. We work from the electronics and transportation area into healthcare and consumer products that you may know, like Post-it notes and Scotch-Brite scouring. And what we're finding is we can, yes, apply those in our global manufacturing operations to be smarter and learn more about our manufacturing process, but also in the healthcare space for recognizing what doctors are saying and how to statistically know which protocol is more effective and so on. The materials are also highly relevant as we move towards data centers having more and more demands. There's material solutions that have to make that happen. And they have requirements that have different dielectric behaviors and other requirements associated with carrying more data through the system. And so it's a lot of impacts that you might not think of when you think of a company that makes Post-it notes.
Well, yeah, I think you're also very involved, I heard on our pre-call, with the smartphone. So in a way, companies like 3M are also very involved in that technological change. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're, watching this on any kind of screen, but it could be a smartphone, if you're liking, the level of brightness you have or the battery life that you have, or even the way that it resists scratching, you probably have some 3M materials to thank for that. And they keep going faster and smaller, which is great for the kind of work we do.
Well, very good. Ryan, as we talked about, you're more in the digital transformation space as you cater to restaurants and the end consumer. You're focusing a lot on Latin America, but how is the North America experience helping you solve those social challenges with Pacto and what you're doing specifically in this industry?
For sure. So I'm Ryan Croft, the CEO and co-founder of Pacto. We're a system or point of sale system for restaurants and bars in Mexico today. I split time between Washington, D.C. and Mexico City. We have a team here in an office. And we've really pulled a lot of inspiration from some of the companies that have come before us, like Toast, Square, Clover in the United States, and understanding what problems are they solving for a truly brick and mortar type of merchant. So the taqueria that you visit around the corner, or a coffee shop in Condesa, primarily, 5 years ago, they were cash and paper and pen. So something as simple as just having all of their information in the cloud, their information in a point of sale system, and being able to accept digital payments is transformational for that small merchant. So for us, digitization is really just a core of what a small merchant needs day to day to run their business and hopefully run it more efficiently and more profitably.
And Sharon, I know a lot of people wouldn't imagine this. How would AI apply or machine learning into the energy sector? What's your experience and how are you guys applying it at TC Energy in Canada and the rest of the countries that you're having operations?
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of people are wondering what is an energy infrastructure person doing up here. And I think I'm a little bit like Lil Nas X in the sense of he does country really well, but you never think of him as a country star. Well, I would say it's very similar in the energy sector. I don't know if you know this, but if you're connected to a smart grid, they can tell whether or not you're watching on your show on the television set a romance or whether you're watching some action series, because every piece of electronics in your house has a specific signature. And it allows us, so that's where we're using technology, not to spy, but really to look at how do we maximize energy usage? Are there things that we can do to maximize the energy system to be most efficient? You can do that in the gas system as well. They're not as smart, so they don't know what you're watching on TV. But in the gas system, you could be able to tell whether or not you have a leak on the system, which needs to be addressed, or is it a water leak in your water heater that needs to be addressed but isn't a safety concern. So these are just some ways that we use technology. We also can use technology if there's a technician on the field. You can now FaceTime to help solve problems in the field. So those are just a few ways that we're leveraging the analytics of data to help maximize the efficiencies of the energy system.
And staying with you and shifting a little bit from AI learning to clean energy and autonomous vehicles, how are you guys thinking about this, given that a lot of the demand comes from the automotive industry? How are you preparing for this? How are you thinking about clean energy? How are you thinking about renewables? What are you guys doing specifically at TC Energy on this?
So at TC Energy, we're really thinking about the energy systems as an all-in. There isn't one perfect solution to advance the energy transition. So moving to electric vehicles is a smart way to start to move the transportation system. But there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built to make that happen effectively. How do you maximize the use of your molecules and your use of your electrons and have them interchangeable? So for example, there's a technology called power to gas that is in development. It's not commercialized yet, and that's one of the issues in the energy sector is how do we commercialize some of these more innovative ways to reduce emissions. But power to gas is kind of an interesting technology in the sense of it takes renewable energy, which must be used when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. You have to use it and you have to match that with your demand. So how do you store the sun long term? And power to gas is a way that you can actually do this by collecting that energy from the electrons and actually converting it to a molecule, hydrogen, that can either be delivered if we advance a hydrogen economy or even can be combined with CO2. And you can actually deliver then natural gas that comes from the sun and from excess CO2 in the air. So that's just a way that those technologies can advance. But right now, I think the biggest challenge is how do we advance these technologies while continuing to advance reliable, secure, and affordable energy? And that's really the energy trilemma that we're trying to address.
Thank you. Gail, on this same subject, 3M operates in a lot of parts. So let's keep it to the North Capital Forum focus. So Canada, the US, and Mexico. How are you guys navigating the regulatory environment in terms of the environmental impact and reaching the goals that each country has? And what are the specific challenges you're facing on that side?
Wow, that the regulatory environment always is a challenging one, especially now. And I know you said focus on North America. We've been in North America. Well, we were formed as a company more than 120 years ago in Minnesota, but then over 75 years ago, 76 years ago, we set up in Mexico, and then 6 months later, we set up in Canada. So we've been working this North American way thing for a long time. I would say a lot of the regulations that we see are starting, the most advanced ones on environmental are really starting from Europe, and then they come to North America from there. And what's I think is really interesting for us right now and tricky is that because we're a global company, we manage 60,000 products around the world. We need to deliver what Europe needs when their regulations go into place. And very often that means that that's the product that we're delivering and the capability that we're delivering across North America and Asia and every place else. And so one of the things that is happening is our customers are pulling us for those things. It's yes, the regulations, but very often our customers are anticipating ahead of those. So one of the things that I think is going to impact North America a lot in Canada, US, and Mexico is that our customers are expecting, for example, the carbon footprint of every product. I'm not saying every customer yet, but increasingly. And so this means that we need to pass it on. We need to set it up for ourselves and make it available to those customers in Europe, but also it will be available to others. But that's what we're going to be asking for from our suppliers. So when we talk about nearshoring, this is one of the things that makes me nervous for Mexico, is because that's something that I don't think we've really started talking about or looking into yet, is what is the carbon footprint of the product or the material or the other supply that's being made in Mexico today? Because we're going to need to be able to roll that up for our customers in Europe sooner rather than later. And then I expect that it's going to be something that's expected. And furthermore, once we have that data and we can really understand our carbon footprint by product and by location and by portfolio and by businesses, we're going to start making more and more decisions based on that carbon footprint. So I think when we talk about the trade between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, that's going to end up coming to bear sooner than I think most people realize.
Very good. Shifting a little bit of gears, so going from big companies to the gig economy. I'll start with you, Anna. How do you see the North America labor market shifting, given the investment you're making in some of these gig economy-driven companies? We know a lot of them, food delivery companies. There's companies like Odesk that used to be there, Elance. How are you seeing that shift?
So what we've seen so far is an enormous amount of flexible working opportunities being provided, which really benefits a lot of people who don't want to be stuck in a 9-to-5 job. Those kind of jobs are particularly good for women because women are usually the number one care providers in the families of both children and older people. And so we've seen things like such as Uber and other delivery services, like you mentioned, Rappi and others, really providing a different kind of working opportunities. Now, obviously, there are challenges to those as well. The lack of formality in the contracts, the lack of benefits, formal compensation benefits, but they also provide a lot of opportunities as well. And the other space we're seeing is, now, obviously, the buzzword that everyone's hearing about is nearshoring, and that is also providing a lot of opportunities for new tech entrepreneurs looking to specifically solve those areas. So, for example, in our portfolio, we have Umari. I've also, as an angel, invested in Pesos. In different ways, they service the nearshoring opportunities, and we're seeing a lot of So in terms of the gig economy, nearshoring, we're seeing people seeing those opportunities, and entrepreneurs, men and women, both being motivated by that and looking to develop their entrepreneurial participation in those spaces.
And hitting on that topic about the benefits and the lack of organization, I'm going to ask Ryan because he's in that industry. But if you look at what's happening in some states in the U.S., like California, where they're trying to unionize the workers, how is that impacting verticals like the one you're trying to attack, Ryan? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, maybe based on my experience and knowledge with the restaurant and sort of small retail sectors, I think it's less about sort of the gig economy being affected and more about just digitization changing the types of jobs that there are overall. So I think there's a lot of fear that new technology comes in and replaces jobs and people are out of work. I think these waves have happened in the past, and generally when that happens, you just find different types of jobs, different skills need to be required to really move the economy forward or to help companies grow. So it's less about replacing jobs and gig economy type work, retail and restaurants. It's more new jobs will be created over time.
So on that point, I think I told you guys, but I want to ask you within each of your industries, what do you think it's right today that's going to be wrong in 100 years, and why? Who wants to start?
Oh, I'll give it a shot.
Go for it. Southern California represent here. Come on, let's go.
One of the things I really worry about, and I hope I'm wrong and that we're actually right, is that we're going to be able to advance the energy transition to meet net zero by 2050. And why I worry about this is I think we're often talking against each other and talking about targets. And rather than coming up with a solution that is based on the practicalities of each of the countries and based on the availability of energy, we're creating paper solutions, things that aren't actually going to move the needle forward to reduce energy. And I think natural gas is a primary example of this. Natural gas in the US and elsewhere has really been the lever to move from our carbon emissions down in the US was really done by natural gas, and it is the friend to renewable energy because it has that base load. So rather than increasingly trying to meet targets and upping the targets and saying we really need to move now, let's be thoughtful in the solutions, take real world solutions that we have today that can advance the energy transition in a smart way so that we can then develop those additional solutions like carbon capture or other new technologies that really get to scale. And so my fear is that 100 years from now, we are going to have missed the mark, not because we couldn't have made the mark, but because we were talking about it on paper and not actually putting it in solutions.
I'm happy to take a stab. I think this might be controversial. A lot of people like food delivery, but I personally think that the business model behind food delivery is not sustainable. So everybody wants their food delivered or pharmaceuticals, whatever, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it may be. The irony is the merchant doesn't like it because they get cut out of 30, 40% of their revenue or their spread. It's expensive in most markets for the end consumer. And I'm not sure it's a sustainable business model for the Rappies and Uber Eats and DoorDashes of the world. So that's something that might not be there in the future in its current format.
So Ryan, on that, because all of us use it, if you think it's going to be wrong, what do you think changes?
Well, and then there's an obvious environmental impact of it too. Getting something, a burrito delivered in 10 minutes probably isn't good for the environment. So maybe some other eating in or some other business model that we haven't even seen yet, frankly.
Okay. Anna, you next?
Yeah, what's fundamentally driving me and what I'm doing is at Amplifica, we're investing in women, is that we believe that we really need to have diversity to have better solutions, better solutions for everyone, not just better solutions for women, better for the solutions in technology that include the values and vision of women and people in a broader sense. And so at the moment, why I think we're wrong is that we have a society that isn't actually very democratic, where you have a few people making the decision for the rest of the people, that doesn't reflect their vision and values. So I think the model we have currently is wrong, and that in 100 years' time we will have a different kind of decision-making process that will be a lot more inclusive and have better outcomes for all.
You ready for the follow-up?
Yeah.
So how would you change it? How does it look like?
Well, how does it look like? It's for the people who are in power today, that have a certain educational background and access, to start including others. And it's very hard to do that because there's generally very little incentive. So it's going outside of your comfort zone and inviting others who aren't represented to participate.
Okay, good one.
Okay. Well, I'm going to build a little bit on what Sharon said, because I think there are a lot of solutions ready to go today for the climate change, for global warming. There's a lot of solutions. We should just get off the dime and start doing them. And as we learn more, we'll go. What I think we're not focusing on enough is actually water. And I think in Mexico, I think we can feel it. Growing up near the Great Lakes in the US, large fraction of the global freshwater source. I know it's taken for granted still today. And I think we need to put a lot of energy into that. I mean, 70+% of our bodies are made out of water. You can't go very long without having water. It's absolutely critical that we put more energy in. And one of the things 3M is doing is we're working through the United Nations with the Water Resilience Coalition on the concept of what does it mean to have a net positive water impact. We talk about net zero, that means carbon emissions. It does today. We talk about, things like that. We know what the definition is. We don't even have a definition today for water. We're working on it. It's about quality. It's about usage. It's about accessibility to clean, clear water for communities so that they can thrive. But I think we're making a mistake not focusing more on water today.
Well, following up on that, we talked about what is a question that doesn't get asked enough in your industry? Your answer can't be the same one that what's going to be wrong in the next 100 years. But what do you think should be talked about more within your specific industry about the future, about innovation, about talent? Again, I'm gonna volunteer anybody to raise their hand, and if not, I'm gonna pick one. So it looks like Ryan's very anxious to answer.
Yeah, I guess, I'm a U.S. citizen and I started a company in Mexico. So a question I get asked often is why? Why did you choose to start a startup in Mexico? And I think most people in the United States don't see the potential in Latin America. They don't see the size of the market, multi-trillion-dollar GDP, 900 million people, very high smartphone penetration, very young population, and a huge upside as an investor, as a startup founder, as someone working in the region. This is one of the last remaining faucets of growth, I think, for digitization in the world. So the time to invest or start a company in Latin America is now. And that's, not very obvious to many people who are not in Mexico frequently.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on Ryan's answer because I really love that. I mean, I think what we need to be talking about more is shared prosperity. Looking at, we see a lot of challenges in North America that we share. When we look at we look at water, we look at immigration, we look at drugs, and so those are the questions that we think we should be looking about as business people. In the private sector, how can we collaborate to develop more value to create greater shared prosperity, in all senses of the word. And that's what I'm really excited about, the opportunity that, being here in Mexico, that gives to us. And I would love to see greater, collaboration across North America to solve some of these challenges.
I'll go next. So I get the question a lot about, can we afford it? Isn't it more expensive? I think the question we should be asking is, can we afford not to? let's look out just a little bit in time. I know we're focused on North America, but Canada has a carbon tax. We don't in the US, we don't in Mexico, but we're paying carbon taxes all around the world as a company. But the way our finances work, the individual businesses don't even see it. And so they're not aware how much they're losing from that if they're having a higher carbon footprint. And I think, so many times it comes in, whether it's, we're working with a government or others, can we afford it? The fact is, ultimately, we're going to pay for it. So shouldn't we make the decision now to offset something that's going to come down the road? And I know that's a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll play off that a bit, but thinking about it slightly differently. So we are going to have, by 2050, at least 1 billion more people on the earth. And many of them, most of them actually, are in developing countries. They're not in the developed countries. And we tend to think about sustainability and particularly reducing our carbon emissions from a developed country perspective. There are a lot of people in the world, including Mexico, that don't have affordable, reliable, and secure energy. And so as we're thinking about how do we expand the prosperity worldwide in developing countries and lower emissions. So demand is going up. We need to get the energy footprint, our carbon emissions down. How do we do that in a meaningful and sustainable way? And the one way to prosperity, I think water and food are the two other parts of that package, is having affordable, reliable, and secure energy. And even in the United States, in California, 30% of those who are customers of the energy system are on subsidized rates because they can't afford it. So we need to figure out how to do this in a way that actually creates that energy security, affordability, and reliability for the prosperity of the world. And that's actually where I think North America has a real opportunity. Because if we get it right, we are energy rich. And global emissions are not stuck to the borders. So how do we work together, set targets together that we can actually achieve, and take some of the richness we have from an energy perspective and actually be able to deliver that secure energy to even Europe, who doesn't have the security we have with our energy system? How do we keep it secure? But also, how do we create that reliable energy for somebody who is cooking with dung or cooking with wood, and that is their energy source?
So to follow up on all four, because it's pretty challenging to talk about 4 different industries and different stages of each company's life. But one of the things that's not mentioned a lot, I think, in the future is, what is the role of talent and training and people within each of your industries? So I would like to ask you, what is your industry lacking more in terms of talent? And it can't be general. We need to get into specifics. So Anna, I think you'll be the first one to answer this.
Okay, I mean, we had in our little table before when we were having discussion, one of the things we were talking about, I'm going to say it first, is it's education. It's basic, and it's not something that's just in Mexico. It's across North America. The lack of people in Mexico that speak English and the lack of people in the US that speak Spanish, that can really, drive, a lot better collaboration. So that's a very, very basic thing that we see, lack of, the language skills.
Does it impact the entrepreneurs you're trying to invest if they don't know?
100%. So someone, you can hear the way I speak, it's very important to me to be able to be inclusive. And so I would like to say, doesn't matter if you don't speak English, you can still pitch me and we'll support you and everything. And people say to me, Anna, don't be ridiculous. People who can't speak English, how are they going to raise their next round of capital? And if they need to go to the US, which most companies that aspire to grow, they need to raise capital in the US after raising in local markets, and they can't give a pitch in good English, well, then they won't be able to raise capital. So it's a real issue, and I would love to see that addressed.
But I 100% agree. I think it's a huge issue that's not being tackled, especially at the K-12 level. So
I'll build on that a little bit, and I would say technical literacy. Now, at 3M, often that means material science, but the ability to be savvy with the technology so that you can move faster, whether it's using Chat GBT and AI tools, or being able to switch from one from a gas-powered something to an electric-powered something on a renewable grid. Having that technical agility and the confidence to be able to steer your career as you go, because just looking around, I think we've had maybe some luxuries to stay in one career, but the way I see the future going, people are going to be switching careers and switching jobs, and they have to be technically savvy and have that mindset that goes along with it. I'm pretty excited about where it's going, but it can be terrifying too.
So Gail, quick question on 3M. Given that you recruit across a lot of different areas and countries, what are the primary areas you're recruiting? What type of education and background are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest I would say is STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, and that, we have a bias on that, I'm sure. But we're also looking for good business leaders. We're looking for excellent communicators. We're looking for people who do a great job in government affairs and understand how politics works on whatever scale makes the sense for that area. Excellent manufacturing skills. But what we're seeing is that each of those is getting revolutionized right now with technology and artificial intelligence. If we think that the internet has changed our world, artificial intelligence is going to be 100 times more of a change. And it's so hard to imagine what that really means. But think about us. Many of us in this room remember life before the internet. Imagine something that has that much greater magnitude with artificial intelligence. We're going to have to adapt to that in every part of society.
Ryan?
Yeah, from my point of view as a startup founder, talent and access to capital are probably two competing most important things that you need to grow a business. And for us, that means it's the oxygen, which is software engineering, product managers, and people who know how to scale and grow. And the one thing I guess I've noticed, you can kind of look at it in three different stages. Before 2010, there were only a handful of companies that had exited for a meaningful amount, the Mercado Libres of the world. And those spun off and created a lot of new founders and mid-level managers for the next wave of internet and software companies in Latin America, 2010 to 2020. That created Nubank, that created Kavak, and some incredible, really like transformational once-in-a-generation companies. I think there's going to be a third wave of software companies coming into Latin America from 2021 to the end of the decade. And really, what you need is that middle-level management. And what that means is people who have done it before, they've had the experience of scaling up a startup on the product side or on the commercial side, and taking those learnings and doing it again and doing it again. And that's hard to build. It takes time. But it's the oxygen that's going to really fan the flames for startup growth in the future.
Sharon?
I think I would start with, most people think of the energy sector as being staid, very traditional, not very exciting. And in some parts of the energy sector as going away or having to go away. And so how do we move those people out into other jobs? And so that's really a perception problem as opposed to the reality, I think, of the energy sector being very dynamic, being instrumental in actually achieving our global emission reductions that we're striving to do. And so I think part of it is just letting people understand there really is a future in the energy sector, in all parts of the energy sector, that there's a lot of dynamic and interesting work going on. AI or other advanced technologies, like I said, we're a little bit like little Nice X. I said it wrong, sorry about that. But in the sense that we are a much more interesting industry than I think most people think. So we want talent coming into the industry. We have talent. We are at TC Energy thought of ourselves as energy problem solvers. We want more energy problem solvers. They're out there. They just need to understand just how exciting the energy sector is right now.
So we got 11 minutes left, and I want to get two questions, so we'll probably have to be concise. First question on this one is, how do you think in the future If we look at how much the world has improved in general, and we're talking about averages, the middle class has grown, especially in North America and some like north of Mexico. How do you think your industry is going to help the middle class keep improving and get more people to that point, and the ones that are there not to be left behind? So I'll ask for each of you to do 1 minute answers.
Yeah, it's leapfrogging. It's access to technology that before people needed to have a computer at their home, and now they've got a computer in their hand. So it's access to medical treatment. It's access to education in a form that's a lot more accessible and cheaper. And so that's what we're doing through digital transformation.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just be simple. There's many consumer products and consumer areas that we focus towards the middle class around the world. And then there's also all the things that are inside the other things that you have. So we talked about smartphones at the beginning, automobiles, construction, home construction. All of those are things that are really relevant for the middle class and that we're helping enable every day with our products.
Yeah, we work with brick and mortar merchants primarily, which is a very kind of mundane brick and mortar kind of business. So for us, it's really foundational, and why we started the business in the first place is to help that long tail of merchants to run their business better, and really simple things like starting from paper and pen and only accepting cash to having the ability to run your business remotely and not be there every minute of every day, and to be able to accept digital payments. If someone comes from Canada to the United States to a taqueria in Cancun, they can pay with their local credit card, and you can accept that credit card and grow your business. So it's pretty simple stuff. Digitization of the most basic necessities of a business and being able to accept cash payments or replace cash payments with digital payments.
You grow from an energy perspective, you grow the middle class by making sure you have secure, reliable, and affordable energy. At the end of the day, that's a necessary component to the middle class, not thinking about how are my lights going to go on? How am I going to get the energy I need to cook my food? And so that's really, I think, what we need to do as we're advancing is always have that as the North Star as we're lowering carbon. And I think we can do both.
So great, you guys did a great job. So for the final question, you get 2 minutes. I'm going to start on the other way. So I'll start with Sharon. But what is the one question that I didn't ask you that you have this forum that you think should have been asked about your industry, to think about the future, to think about how technology is going to change it, that you want this audience to leave with, and give us your potential answer of why that question is important?
I think the question I would ask is, how do we take policy and regulations and de-silo them to get to an energy solution that gives us that North Star? And my answer to that would be, let's start with North America, because I think we've got a great opportunity because we are so rich in our resources, but also really have stable governments. And we have the ability to work across and really help to lower global emissions in a meaningful way, but also in a secure, affordable, and reliable way. And so that would be the question. And I think there's a way to start thinking about us as the European Union does. Right? What are the North American targets? How do we synchronize regulations so that if you're delivering energy throughout the system, you don't have those barriers? Even in the United States, how do you eliminate the barriers between states when it comes to energy? So that would be my question and my answer.
Good. Brian?
I would just say, why Mexico? I mean, we chose to start here. Maybe I sound like a broken record, but why is it such a big opportunity today? It's a huge market. It's still, even a couple of years ago, 40, 50% cash for transactions. When you compare that to places like the United States, it's in the 70s or 80% transactions that are cashless, and the Nordics are high 90% cashless societies. I just think it lifts up the middle class, gives people opportunity, gives someone the chance to open a bank account and not just have cash underneath their mattress. It provides them new and greater opportunities to grow economically and move up the class. So Mexico is a huge opportunity, and transferring a lot of this cash-based society to a digital society is going to lift up everyone.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit before I let the rest of the panel answer. I want to ask you a follow-up question on that. What do you think is misunderstood about Mexico from the U.S. and Canada? Because I get to live on both sides of the border and spend a lot of time, and I'm always shocked that people have a different opinion of Mexico, and a lot of them haven't visited it. So how do you change that?
Yeah, there's a couple answers to that question. But number one, I think the talent is extremely deep here. And I was surprised. We felt like started the business originally, we had a lot of our technology and the software was built in the United States. And quickly we realized there's an incredible depth of talent and technical talent here that we've moved all of our team pretty much to Mexico. So a very robust technical sea here of great talent.
Okay. Gail?
A question that's kind of fun for me to answer is how should I think about sustainability? We have so many companies represented here, so many governments. So first of all, it depends on who you are and what your situation is. You've heard from a number of different industries. So you look at it differently depending on what's material to you. That's the terminology we use for a materiality study to assess that. So at 3M, we think about the way we can best impact the world is through science. So we look at applying science to help improve lives. And so we have 3 pillars in our strategic sustainability framework. It's about science for circular, to advance a global circular economy, science for climate, because challenge of our lifetime, we all know we need to work in this space and we can, and science for community. Yes, our community of employees, yes, our communities across our value chain, and in the communities where we live, work, and actually the global community of humans that we talk about. So that's how we approach it. You can think for your own organization what would be most relevant. But I think there's 3 words that I like to keep in mind when it comes down to sustainability that are pretty irrefutable at this point. 1, make sure your decisions are based on science, because there are things out there that sound good but really don't have a foundation. Secondly, it's about acting with urgency, because we've already talked about there's a lot of solutions ready to go. Let's move now. And then third, and that's I think where it fits really well with the North American Forum or the North Capital Forum on this, and across the North American way, is it's all about collaboration. It's about collaboration between companies and governments, and civil society around the world. And so we're all in it together.
Very good. What do you think we can learn from each other? One takeaway from each country that you think Canada can take away from Mexico from the
Oh my
US.
gosh, you are really hard about putting us on the spot about these things.
I told you so. They're going to be rapid questions.
So some of you know I served as the CEO for 3M Mexico for a period of time, so I have a very fond spot.
See, it's a softball for you. Come on.
No, it's not. It's really hard because I have lots of things going through my brain. And I grew up in the United States near the Canadian border, so I spent a lot of time in Canada too. And I'm probably going to regret this answer later, but I think that, because after I have a chance to think about something, I usually come up with something better. But I think, I'm going to say my Mexico one. Okay, I think that the U.S. does a pretty good job of business things and being driving efficiency in business and creative partnerships. I think Canada is doing an excellent job of preserving their natural resources as they do business. And I think Mexico just has a fabulous collaboration society and a great way of working with people, and a sense, I said a lot about tech before, but it does ultimately come down to the people, and I think Mexico does that really well.
See, you did great. Very good. So Anna, you get the close. What would be the question?
So Anna, why are you investing in women in Mexico? And for me, I've been so excited to be on this panel and hear the enthusiasm for Mexico, and Mexico is my adopted country, coming from originally from Australia. And what we see is, the underinvestment of women here, which is an enormous opportunity for us. So it's not, poor women, we want to give them a handout. We see women as the creators of wealth, women as the creators of value, not women as beneficiaries. So we are trying to change that mindset, invite others to do the same, so that we can develop technologies that are going to be a lot more inclusive and are going to solve the problems we see, in everyday lives here in Mexico?
That's a great question to ask, especially for a father of two girls. But thank you all for the panel. Thank you all for listening to us. We appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed it.